Beneath the vast desert sky, silence becomes something almost alive. The sand stretches endlessly in every direction, a soft ocean frozen in time. At night, the air cools, and the stars awaken, so bright, so many, that they seem to breathe. The desert doesn't simply sleep, it hums. There's a stillness so complete that even the faintest breeze sounds like a whisper carrying stories older than memory itself. The world here moves slowly, as if time itself gets lost among the dunes. In this deep quiet, every sound, every flicker of light, feels amplified. It's in this space between stillness and echo that legends find their home. People say the desert remembers what others forget. That its emptiness is not absence, but a kind of listening. Imagine lying on your back in the warm sand, the sky and ocean of starlight above you. You trace constellations that ancient travelers once used to find their way home. The air carries the faint scent of sagebrush and dust, an aroma that seems eternal. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote calls, its voice fading into the vastness. The landscape is both peaceful and eerie, familiar yet unknowable. This is the kind of place where the veil between the seen and unseen feels thin. The desert has always attracted those searching for something: truth, silence, transcendence. But it has also been a place where things beyond explanation seem to occur. Travelers have long spoken of strange lights gliding silently across the horizon, of faint glows pulsing above mesas, of moments when time itself seems to pause as the night holds its breath. For countless generations, the people who lived closest to this land have told stories of the stars. The Hopi, the Zuni, the Navajo, all have legends of visitors who came from above, beings wrapped in light who offered wisdom, guidance, or warning. To them, these were not aliens, as modern language would suggest, but spirits, ancestors, or watchers, entities who bridged the space between worlds. When you stand beneath the desert's night sky, it's not hard to imagine why they believe that. The stars here feel impossibly close, like embers drifting just out of reach. The Milky Way stretches from one horizon to another, a river of light that seems to flow silently above the earth. It's easy to feel small beneath it, and easier still to feel that something might be watching back. The desert has always been a mirror for human imagination. In its stillness, our thoughts echo. When we stare long enough at the horizon, our minds begin to fill the emptiness with meaning. That's why the same isolation that comforts some people unsettles others. Out here, without city lights or noise to distract us, we confront not only the vastness of the universe but the vastness within ourselves. Perhaps that's why so many encounters with the unknown begin in places like this. The desert strips away what's unnecessary, leaving only the observer, the stars, and the quiet question of what lies beyond. Sometimes, in the distance, a faint glow appears, hovering low above the sand, silent and unhurried. It drifts, brightens, fades. Some say it's a trick of light, a reflection caused by heat or atmospheric conditions. Others swear they've seen the lights move with intent, responding to their presence as if aware. It's this uncertainty that defines the desert's mystery. Science can measure temperature, light, and sound, but it cannot measure awe. And awe is what this place inspires most. Whether it's the glow of Venus near the horizon or something far stranger, the effect is the same, the feeling that we are witnesses to something immense and unsolved. The desert does not give away its secrets easily. Its mysteries come softly, often at the edge of perception, half seen, half heard, always just beyond certainty. For those who seek answers, the desert offers questions instead. What are these silent lights that drift across the night? Are they remnants of something ancient, or the inventions of a restless human mind longing for wonder? The wind moves, the sand shifts, and the stars remain. Each night, the desert whispers the same quiet invitation: to listen, to look, and to wonder. As you lie there beneath the shimmering vault of sky, a strange calm settles in. You begin to sense how many before you have looked up at this same sky: tribes, wanderers, soldiers, dreamers, all united by that same gaze into the unknown. The desert doesn't just hold stories, it keeps them alive, blending myth and memory into something eternal. Its silence is not empty. It's filled with echoes of every question humanity has ever asked the stars. And somewhere out there, perhaps beyond the edge of vision, the lights still move, slow, deliberate, and patient, as if waiting for those who will dare to see. Long before radar, telescopes, or satellite images, the night skies above the desert told their own silent story. Ancient peoples lived beneath these same stars, their lives guided by celestial rhythms that shaped their understanding of the universe. The vastness of the desert was not emptiness to them. It was sacred space, a bridge between the physical and the divine. When strange lights appeared in the heavens, they were not seen as anomalies but as messages, signs from beings who lived beyond the clouds. Among the Hopi, there are stories of the Kachinas, spiritual messengers from the stars who descended to teach the people how to live in harmony with the earth. The Zuni spoke of the Shiwani, ancestral beings who traveled between worlds. The Navajo told of the holy people, luminous figures who emerged from the sky and guided humanity toward balance and understanding. To these cultures, the desert was not a barren wasteland but a place of contact, a thin place where the boundaries between heaven and earth could be crossed. Across generations, these stories became woven into rituals, songs, and symbols. When archaeologists began documenting the petroglyphs carved into canyon walls and sandstone cliffs throughout New Mexico, Utah, and Arizona, they found images that seemed to capture moments of celestial encounter. Circular patterns resembling discs, beings with radiant halos, and spiral shapes stretching skyward appear in sites thousands of years old. Mainstream archaeologists interpret these as depictions of the sun, the moon, or shamanic visions experienced during trance states. But others, researchers, enthusiasts, and indigenous storytellers alike, have suggested that some of these carvings might represent something more literal, the ancient memory of contact with beings from beyond our world. The debate between symbolic and literal meaning continues even now, mirroring the very mystery that first inspired those carvings. It's important to understand the psychological and spiritual environment in which these images were created. To ancient peoples, the sky was not a distant expanse of cold emptiness. It was alive, conscious, and inhabited. Every celestial event carried significance. A comet could foretell transformation. A cluster of stars might mark the presence of ancestral spirits. The shimmering lights of the Milky Way were often seen as a celestial pathway, a river connecting the realm of the living with the world of the gods. In such a worldview, seeing a moving light or a sudden glow across the horizon was never random, it was communication. Whether divine or mysterious, it was a reminder that humanity was being watched, guided, and perhaps even tested. Anthropologists studying shamanic traditions have long noted that altered states of consciousness often play a role in such experiences. Through rhythmic drumming, fasting, or ritual dance, shamans entered trances in which they claimed to travel beyond the human world, to the realm of spirits or star beings. During these visions, they described luminous entities, spinning lights, and doorways opening in the sky. When compared to modern UFO testimonies, the similarities are striking. The light that descends, the feeling of being chosen or observed, the sense of time distortion, and the overwhelming awe that accompanies the encounter. It's possible that what ancient shamans experienced inwardly is what we now see outwardly, different interpretations of a single mysterious phenomenon that has always been part of human perception. Some modern researchers propose that the desert itself amplifies such visions. Its isolation, stillness, and vast reflective landscape can affect the mind in profound ways. Without city noise or light pollution, even the smallest glow can seem extraordinary. The mind, in its heightened state of awareness, becomes more suggestible to wonder. Yet, that doesn't mean these ancient stories were imagined. In fact, the consistency of these myths across cultures, from the American Southwest to the deserts of Egypt, from the Australian outback to the high plateaus of Peru, suggests something universal. Nearly every ancient civilization has spoken of beings from the sky, descending in radiant forms, bringing knowledge, and then vanishing again into the stars. Whether gods, spirits, or visitors, they all share one defining trait. They come from the light. It is tempting in our modern, technological world to see these stories as primitive interpretations of natural phenomena, meteors, planets, or atmospheric lights mistaken for divine events. But even this explanation reveals something profound. Humanity has always been wired to find meaning in the heavens. The night sky acts as both mirror and mystery, reflecting our deepest questions about existence. Why are we here? Are we alone? What if those same questions were asked 10,000 years ago, under the same sky that now draws UFO hunters and astronomers alike? Consider the Chaco Canyon civilization, which flourished in the New Mexico desert 1,000 years ago. Its great houses and ceremonial structures were aligned precisely with celestial events, the solstices, lunar standstills, and star risings. The people who built them were skywatchers, recording the movement of heavenly bodies with extraordinary accuracy. Some scholars believe their fascination was purely agricultural or spiritual, yet others have suggested that they were tracking something else, something unpredictable, irregular, and luminous. A carving known as the sun dagger seems to capture not just solar movement but possibly a record of an unusual object seen in the sky. Whether it was a supernova, a comet, or something far less explainable, the fact remains. The desert sky has always held visitors whose nature defies simple classification. As centuries passed, these stories endured, transformed, and adapted. Colonial settlers heard indigenous legends of sky people and recorded them as curiosities, not realizing that similar tales existed in their own ancestral folklore. European accounts of chariots of fire or angels of light. In this way, myth became a shared language, bridging cultures and eras. The stories may have changed names and symbols, but the essence remained. The idea that something intelligent and radiant occasionally reaches down from the heavens to remind humanity of its small but significant place in the cosmos. When we listen to these ancient voices, we are reminded that the mystery of the UFO, or the unknown light, is not new. It is as old as wonder itself. The desert, with its vast silence and endless horizon, preserves these memories better than any book. In the wind, in the rocks, and in the faint glow that sometimes dances across the night, the past still speaks. Perhaps what we call ancient myth was never just imagination. Perhaps it was testimony, a record of encounters written not in ink or data, but in story and stone. As night deepens over the desert, it's easy to picture those early people looking up, eyes wide with awe, hearts quiet in the presence of something greater. The same stars that guided them still burn above us, unchanged, while we continue to search for answers they might already have understood. Maybe the sky was never empty. Maybe, long before we named the phenomenon UFO, long before cameras and telescopes, humanity already knew that the lights above were watching and waiting. By the mid-20th century, the quiet mystery of the desert sky transformed into something far more urgent. Humanity had entered a new era, one defined by speed, technology, and the shadow of atomic power. The 1940s and 1950s were decades of both wonder and fear. Rockets were reaching the edge of space. Nuclear weapons had reshaped not only warfare but human imagination itself. The night sky, once a symbol of peace and mystery, became a frontier of potential danger. Against this backdrop, reports began to pour in, stories of luminous disks darting across the heavens, strange metallic shapes hovering over remote military bases, and objects that defied both explanation and gravity. For the first time in history, the mystery of lights in the sky became not just folklore but a matter of national concern. The story of the modern UFO era truly began in June 1947, when a private pilot named Kenneth Arnold reported seeing a formation of 9 silvery objects near Mount Rainier, Washington. He described them as moving like saucers skipping across water. Within days, newspapers across the country seized on the phrase, flying saucers, and the modern age of UFOs was born. The timing could not have been more significant. Just 2 years after the atomic bomb had been unleashed on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, humanity's relationship with the sky was shifting from reverence to anxiety. The desert skies of the American Southwest, once symbols of spiritual stillness, became backdrops for a new kind of myth, one shaped by radar, secrecy, and the possibility that we were not alone. Barely a month after Arnold's sighting, something extraordinary and deeply controversial occurred in the New Mexico desert near the small town of Roswell. In early July 1947, rancher Mac Brazel discovered strange debris scattered across his land, lightweight metallic materials, thin strips that seemed resistant to burning, and pieces that crumpled yet returned to their original shape. The Roswell Army Air Field initially issued a press release claiming they had recovered a flying disc, only to retract the statement hours later, explaining the wreckage was merely a weather balloon. But by then, the story had taken root. Witnesses spoke of unusual wreckage, mysterious crates transported under heavy guard, and even rumors of recovered bodies. Though the official narrative shifted repeatedly over the years, from weather balloon to secret Project Mogul surveillance device, the conflicting accounts left behind a residue of doubt. Roswell became not just an incident but a cultural symbol, the first time the government's explanation seemed less believable than the mystery itself. The post-war period saw the skies fill not only with rumors but with actual experimentation. As the U.S. and Soviet Union raced to outdo one another in technological supremacy, new aircraft were being tested in secret, often above the very same deserts that would become synonymous with UFO lore. Groom Lake, later known as Area 51, became a test site for experimental aircraft like the U-2 and the A-12 Oxcart, machines capable of speeds and altitudes unknown to the public. Pilots and civilians who glimpsed these craft from afar described them as glowing, disc-shaped, and silent, precisely the qualities associated with UFO sightings. The irony is striking. In many cases, the same government secrecy that protected national security also fueled the legend of extraterrestrial visitors. The desert's vastness made it the perfect hiding place for both experimental technology and unanswered questions. In 1952, the U.S. Air Force established Project Blue Book, an official investigation into UFO reports that would continue for nearly 2 decades. At its height, it documented over 12,000 sightings, ranging from the mundane to the utterly inexplicable. The project's findings were mixed. While most cases were attributed to stars, planets, or misidentified aircraft, a small percentage remained unidentified even after thorough analysis. Among these were sightings by trained observers, pilots, radar operators, and military personnel, whose credibility lent the phenomenon a new gravity. The government's public stance was that UFOs posed no threat and were likely misinterpretations, yet behind closed doors, unease persisted. Classified memos revealed that officials feared not alien invasion but public panic. In an age when nuclear anxiety hung over every household, the idea of visitors from the stars was both terrifying and oddly comforting. The 1950s also gave rise to the first generation of so-called contactees, ordinary men and women who claimed not merely to have seen UFOs but to have communicated with their occupants. Figures like George Adamski told stories of meeting benevolent space brothers who warned humanity about nuclear destruction and urged global peace. Their tales mixed mysticism with technology, blending science fiction and spirituality in equal measure. While many dismissed these claims as fantasy, they resonated deeply with a population living under constant Cold War tension. The desert once again served as a stage for revelation. People gathered in the Mojave and Nevada landscapes to meditate, to watch the skies, to wait for something, or someone, to descend. These gatherings blurred the line between religious experience and scientific curiosity. As the decade progressed, the number of sightings continued to grow. Reports came from Air Force pilots, commercial aviators, and even police officers. Radar systems occasionally tracked unknown objects performing maneuvers far beyond the capability of known aircraft. Skeptics argued that mass hysteria and Cold War paranoia were fueling these accounts, while believers pointed to the consistency of the reports as evidence that something real was happening. The U.S. government, caught between maintaining public calm and addressing legitimate unidentified phenomena, walked a careful line. Publicly, officials reassured citizens that nothing extraordinary was occurring. Privately, documents like the 1953 Robertson Panel report recommended reducing public interest through debunking efforts, essentially treating UFOs as a psychological problem rather than an aerial one. Yet even as the authorities downplayed the mystery, the desert itself refused to stay quiet. Strange lights continued to appear near restricted test sites in Nevada and New Mexico, sometimes photographed, often dismissed. In 1957, the Levelland, Texas incident drew attention when multiple drivers reported their engines stalling as a glowing object passed overhead, an event later mirrored in dozens of similar cases across the Southwest. Each new report added another thread to the growing tapestry of uncertainty. By the late 1950s, UFOs had become more than a curiosity, they were a cultural phenomenon, woven into the fears and fascinations of the atomic age. The era's atmosphere was electric with contradiction, scientific progress advancing at breathtaking speed, yet human understanding still anchored to myth and wonder. The same decade that saw satellites launched into orbit also witnessed millions staring skyward, wondering if the stars were looking back. In radio programs and newspapers, the language of mystery evolved. No longer confined to myth or religion, the unknown had become part of the modern imagination. The skies above the desert, once the realm of gods and spirits, were now a contested territory between science and speculation, between national defense and cosmic possibility. In the quiet nights of the Nevada and New Mexico deserts, a subtle transformation was taking place. What had once been spiritual awe became technological anxiety. The luminous craft described by witnesses were no longer celestial chariots but potential visitors, or intruders, from other worlds. And through it all, the desert remained the perfect backdrop, vast, silent, and watchful. It absorbed every rumor, every sighting, every secret flight. The sands that once held ancient carvings of star beings now held radar towers and observation posts. The myths had changed form, but the essence remained. Humanity was still looking upward, still searching for meaning in the glow that moved silently across the night. By the time the 1960s approached, the term UFO had entered everyday language, and the question of what was happening above the desert was no longer confined to fringe believers. Scientists, military analysts, and ordinary citizens all wanted answers. Yet the more data gathered, the more elusive the truth became. The lights kept coming, sometimes vanishing as quickly as they appeared, leaving behind only questions, and the feeling that something beyond understanding was unfolding in the dark. The dawn of modern UFO mystery was not just about sightings or secrecy, it was about humanity's evolving relationship with the unknown. As technology advanced, so did our capacity to observe, but not necessarily to comprehend. The desert, with its endless sky and infinite stillness, became both stage and symbol, a place where the ancient wonder of star myths met the modern machinery of government investigation. And somewhere between those two worlds, between radar screens and sacred stories, lay the same unanswerable truth that had haunted humanity since the beginning, that the sky, no matter how well we study it, still holds its secrets. Across the long highways that stretch through the American Southwest, countless travelers have seen things they cannot explain. The desert night has a way of playing with perception. Its vastness amplifies light, its silence sharpens sound. But even so, too many stories echo the same strange details to be easily dismissed. In this section of the tale, the human voice takes center stage. The witnesses, the observers, the ordinary people who looked up and saw something that changed them forever. These accounts, told in calm tones and remembered through years of doubt and wonder, form the living heart of the UFO mystery. Beneath the glowing desert sky, fact and faith often blur, but within that blur lies an honesty, an emotional truth that resists simple explanation. One of the most famous accounts comes from a man named Lonnie Zamora, a police officer in Socorro, New Mexico. On the evening of April 24, 1964, Zamora was chasing a speeding car when a sudden roar and flash of light drew his attention toward a nearby arroyo. Believing a small explosion had occurred, he drove closer. What he found was no accident site. In the sandy clearing below, he saw a white, egg-shaped craft resting on metal legs. Two small figures, dressed in what he described as white coveralls, stood nearby. When they noticed him, they seemed startled and retreated into the object, which then rose silently, emitting only a low roar before disappearing into the distance. Investigators from the U.S. Air Force's Project Blue Book examined the site and found burned brush and impressions in the ground exactly where Zamora said the craft had landed. No evidence of a hoax was ever uncovered. To this day, the Socorro incident remains one of the most credible UFO encounters ever documented. Farther west, in the Arizona desert, an event unfolded decades later that would reignite public fascination. On March 13, 1997, thousands of people across Arizona, Nevada, and parts of Mexico reported a series of enormous V-shaped lights moving silently across the night sky. The event, later known as the Phoenix Lights, remains one of the largest mass sightings in modern history. Eyewitnesses included pilots, police officers, and entire families standing on rooftops. Some described the craft as a massive, triangular shape blocking out stars as it passed overhead. Others saw a formation of glowing orbs moving in eerie synchronization. The U.S. military later suggested that the lights were flares dropped during a training exercise, but this explanation failed to convince many, especially those who saw the lights long before the reported flare activity. For the people who watched that silent procession across the desert sky, it felt as though something vast and deliberate was moving, something that did not belong to this world, yet moved with purpose and grace. Between these high-profile cases are countless smaller stories. Truck drivers on night routes who glimpse hovering orbs above the highway, hikers who see shimmering shapes cresting the ridges of distant mesas, pilots who track objects moving faster than any known aircraft. One man recalled driving through Nevada's Highway 375, later dubbed the extraterrestrial highway, when a brilliant blue-white light appeared behind his vehicle. It followed him for several miles, sometimes veering off, sometimes closing in, before suddenly shooting upward and vanishing. His voice, when he retold the story years later, was calm but filled with awe. "It wasn't fear," he said. "It was like the world paused to let me see something I wasn't supposed to." Psychologists who study eyewitness phenomena often point out how easily the mind can misinterpret visual stimuli in darkness. Stars twinkling through atmospheric distortion, aircraft lights refracted through layers of heat, or meteors burning at oblique angles. The human brain, wired for pattern recognition, tends to assign meaning to ambiguity. And yet, this explanation feels incomplete. When hundreds of witnesses, separated by miles, describe the same object, moving in the same way with the same sound, or lack thereof, it becomes difficult to write it off as mass illusion. The pattern is what intrigues researchers most, the recurring details of shape, silence, color, and motion that transcend geography and culture. Witnesses often describe not just what they saw but how it made them feel. The emotional consistency of these encounters is striking. Many speak of an overwhelming calm, a sense of peace or paralysis rather than fear. Others describe a humbling awareness, as if touched by something greater. This emotional resonance is what gives the phenomenon its power. To fall asleep beneath the desert sky after seeing a light that defies logic is to confront the vastness of both the universe and the self. It leaves an imprint, a question that never quite fades. For those who investigate such cases, the details matter. The Socorro landing site revealed burned vegetation consistent with high heat but no chemical residue. In the Phoenix Lights case, the objects were visible on radar for brief intervals but not consistently tracked, suggesting either stealth technology or something beyond conventional detection. Pilots have described radar locks on objects that vanish seconds later, leaving instruments scrambled. Even in more mundane incidents, small glowing orbs drifting low over desert roads, the common features persist: silence, intelligent motion, sudden disappearance. The mystery lies not in one sighting but in the patterns repeated across thousands of them. Sociologists studying UFO reports have observed that many witnesses come from practical, skeptical backgrounds. Police officers, soldiers, engineers, and pilots, people trained to observe carefully. When such individuals recount experiences that defy physics, their sincerity challenges easy dismissal. Lonnie Zamora was one such man. His calm, detailed report lacked embellishment. He never sought fame, and the experience disturbed him for years. Similar qualities appear in countless other witnesses. The quiet conviction of people who gain nothing from speaking out but do so because silence feels dishonest. The desert amplifies these experiences in a unique way. Its emptiness isolates events, stripping away distraction and context. A single light in that vast darkness becomes monumental. And when multiple people see it, the experience becomes communal, almost sacred. Some groups even form annual gatherings near known hotspots like the extraterrestrial highway, Sedona's Red Rocks, or the deserts near Roswell, where they meditate, skywatch, and share stories. Whether through belief or curiosity, these rituals carry the same quiet reverence as ancient stargazing, modern echoes of the spiritual practices once performed by indigenous tribes. From a psychological standpoint, such gatherings serve a comforting purpose. They transform the unknown into something shared. Fear becomes fascination. Isolation becomes connection. The witnesses are no longer alone in their memories. Their stories intertwine to form a collective mythology. And perhaps that is why these accounts endure. The details may differ, the color of the light, the sound it made, the exact location, but the feeling remains universal, the sense of standing at the edge of understanding, gazing at something both familiar and alien. Skeptics argue that these experiences reveal more about the human mind than about extraterrestrial visitors. They see them as projections of longing, our desire for connection reflected back to us through the stars. Believers counter that sincerity and consistency are not illusions, that too many independent accounts defy coincidence. Between these two viewpoints lies the delicate balance that defines the UFO mystery. It is not a question of proof, but of perception, what we allow ourselves to see, and what we choose to believe. As the desert wind shifts and the stars shimmer above, one can imagine each eyewitness returning to their ordinary lives, forever changed. Some may doubt what they saw. Others may feel enlightened. But all of them carry the same quiet memory, a moment when the sky itself seemed alive, and the boundary between the known and the unknown dissolved in a silent glow. Out here, beneath the vast heavens, it's easy to believe that the truth doesn't need to shout. It simply hovers, motionless, luminous, waiting to be noticed. And perhaps that is why the stories never stop. Each new account becomes part of an expanding constellation of human experience, a map of curiosity and wonder stretching from the 1940s to today. Whether these lights are experimental aircraft, interdimensional visitors, or manifestations of collective imagination, they serve the same purpose: to remind us that mystery still exists. The desert, patient and timeless, continues to host these encounters, keeping the question alive for another generation of stargazers and dreamers who look upward, searching not for answers, but for the comfort of the unknown. For every witness who saw strange lights in the desert sky, there were others who tried to explain them. Scientists, soldiers, and officials working in silence behind the walls of government secrecy. The more people saw, the quieter the authorities seemed to become. Official explanations shifted like desert sand. First weather balloons, then aircraft, then atmospheric illusions. Yet, the more the explanations changed, the deeper public curiosity grew. As reports multiplied across the 1950s and beyond, the desert, particularly the vast restricted zones of Nevada and New Mexico, became a stage for the greatest paradox of modern history. The more we learned about technology and the cosmos, the less we seemed to understand what was truly happening above us. In this stretch of the story, we turn our gaze not to the stars, but to the halls of secrecy beneath them. The desert has long been the perfect place to hide things. Its isolation provides natural security, its emptiness conceals activity, and its endless horizons swallow both sound and evidence. During the Cold War, as the U.S. government raced to develop advanced aircraft and surveillance systems, the Southwest became home to a network of testing ranges and covert installations. Most famous among them is Groom Lake, better known by its code name, Area 51. Officially, the base didn't exist until 2013, when the CIA finally acknowledged its location and purpose through declassified documents. But for decades before that, it existed in rumor and speculation. Locals spoke of seeing strange glowing objects darting across the skies at impossible speeds. Pilots who strayed near the restricted airspace reported craft with unconventional shapes, cylindrical, triangular, or saucer-like. Some said they saw lights that made no sound, performing maneuvers that defied aerodynamics. When investigators eventually learned that Area 51 had been used to test spy planes such as the U-2 and I-12 Oxcart, many UFO sightings from the era suddenly seemed to have plausible explanations. The U-2, flying at altitudes above 60,000 feet, well beyond the range of commercial aircraft at the time, reflected sunlight in ways that made it appear as a moving, glowing object. To ordinary observers, it was indistinguishable from something otherworldly. But while such revelations explained some sightings, they didn't explain them all. Radar operators still tracked unknown objects. Pilots still reported encounters with luminous crafts that responded to pursuit with impossible acceleration. And some sightings occurred in areas far from any known testing range, often witnessed by entire communities. Government secrecy, necessary for national defense, inadvertently became the lifeblood of UFO mythology. Every classified project, every no comment, every redacted report only deepened the public's suspicion that something extraordinary was being hidden. In 1948, the U.S. Air Force began Project Sign, its first formal study of UFOs. Initially, the analysts at Project Sign leaned toward a radical conclusion that some UFOs might be real, physical craft of unknown origin. This theory, sometimes called the estimate of the situation, reportedly reached as high as the Pentagon before being dismissed as speculative. The following year, Project Sign was replaced by Project Grudge, whose mission was not to investigate but to debunk. Yet by 1952, as sightings increased to thousands per year, the Air Force launched Project Blue Book, a more structured effort that lasted until 1969. Over 12,000 reports were catalogued, and while most were explained as aircraft, stars, or natural phenomena, 701 remained officially unidentified. Even the final Blue Book report admitted that many of these cases involved credible witnesses and evidence that could not be ignored. As the investigations continued, so did the government's attempts to manage public perception. Declassified memos from the 1953 Robertson Panel, organized by the CIA, revealed a clear concern, not that UFOs were alien, but that public obsession with them could be exploited by foreign adversaries. The panel recommended reducing interest through education and ridicule, suggesting that UFO groups and reports be quietly discredited to prevent mass hysteria. In essence, secrecy was no longer just about national security, it had become a tool of psychological control. The desert sky, once an open mystery, was now a chessboard for politics, paranoia, and perception. Behind these strategic silences lay another layer of secrecy, scientific and technological projects whose details only surfaced decades later. Project Mogul, for instance, used high-altitude balloons to monitor Soviet nuclear tests. It was one of these balloons, the government later claimed, that crashed in Roswell in 1947. Operation Paperclip, another Cold War initiative, brought German scientists, including former Nazi engineers, to American soil to accelerate aerospace research. Their work in advanced propulsion, high-speed flight, and atmospheric testing contributed to a wave of experimental designs that often match descriptions of UFOs seen near test sites. The irony is difficult to miss. While Americans were seeing alien craft in their skies, the technology being tested below was indeed foreign, though made by human hands. Even so, the UFO phenomenon was not entirely the product of military programs or public misperception. Within intelligence circles, a quieter curiosity persisted. Files later released through the Freedom of Information Act revealed that agencies such as the CIA, NSA, and even NASA had, at times, seriously considered the possibility of unknown aerial technologies not of human origin. Reports were collected, patterns analyzed, and yet definitive answers remained elusive. One declassified 1952 CIA memo noted that a small percentage of sightings remain unexplained by conventional science and recommended continued monitoring in the interest of national defense. This cautious phrasing reflected the enduring tension between curiosity and caution, between scientific inquiry and the political necessity of denial. By the late 20th century, the secrecy surrounding UFOs had taken on a life of its own. Popular culture began to fill the gaps left by official silence. Movies, television shows, and novels transformed military secrecy into legend. The name Area 51 became synonymous with conspiracy and cosmic mystery. Every light in the desert sky was now a potential secret craft or a visitor from another world. In the absence of open communication, speculation became the default language. And yet, amidst all the noise, occasional glimpses of truth slipped through the cracks. In 1989, a man named Bob Lazar claimed to have worked at a facility near Area 51, reverse engineering alien technology. While his credibility remains disputed, his detailed descriptions of the site's layout and security protocols matched information later confirmed through declassification. Whether Lazar was a whistleblower, a fabricator, or something in between, his story reignited public fascination and drew attention to the growing intersection between government secrecy and extraterrestrial speculation. In recent years, official interest has resurfaced under new names and with a more cautious transparency. Between 2007 and 2012, the Pentagon quietly funded the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, ADIP, a project aimed at studying encounters between military aircraft and unidentified objects. The existence of ADIP was revealed only in 2017, when videos recorded by Navy pilots, showing fast-moving, tic-tac-shaped objects, were released to the public. These clips, verified as authentic by the Department of Defense, reignited debate on a global scale. Suddenly, the language changed. UFO became UAP, unidentified aerial phenomena, a rebranding meant to remove stigma and invite scientific analysis. The same deserts that once hosted secret nuclear tests were now hosting conversations about interdimensional physics and non-human intelligence, not in whispers but in congressional hearings. And yet, despite these revelations, the atmosphere of secrecy persists. The desert remains fenced, guarded, and silent. Security patrols circle the perimeter of restricted zones. Satellite images show new hangars and runways appearing in the sand. Whatever occurs inside those invisible boundaries is known only to a select few. Officially, the research continues to focus on next-generation defense technologies. Unofficially, the public imagination continues to believe there is more, something too extraordinary, too paradigm-shifting, to reveal. The government's silence, intentional or not, keeps the mystery alive. To this day, the deserts of Nevada and New Mexico remain the epicenter of both innovation and speculation. Cutting-edge drones, stealth aircraft, and hypersonic vehicles are tested under the same stars where ancient peoples once saw star beings. The parallels are almost poetic. In every age, the desert becomes the threshold between the known and the unknown. The difference now is that the watchers are not only in the sky, they are also behind radar screens, in briefing rooms, and on the classified pages of government reports that may never see daylight. For those who seek answers, the secrecy is both infuriating and intoxicating. It suggests that there is something worth hiding, something that challenges our understanding of physics, politics, or perhaps even existence itself. Whether that something is advanced human technology, extraterrestrial presence, or a reflection of our collective imagination, the effect is the same. The desert becomes a stage for wonder and suspicion alike. The hum of a distant jet could be the sound of human progress, or the echo of something far stranger. As the stars wheel slowly above the silent test ranges, the boundary between truth and secrecy blurs. Out there in the darkness, perhaps only a few truly know what moves across the sky. For the rest of us, the mystery endures, not because answers are absent, but because they are hidden. And in that silence, the desert continues to whisper, guarding its twin legacies of invention and enigma, technology and transcendence. The same winds that erase footprints in the sand carry rumors through the night, reminding us that even in an age of satellites and science, there are still places on Earth where the unknown is protected, not by distance, but by design. As the curtain of secrecy thickened around government installations and classified research, a parallel narrative began to take shape, one woven not from official reports or military programs, but from dreams, intuition, and experiences that defied the boundaries of conventional science. If the previous decades had been about radar traces, physical evidence, and bureaucratic silence, the next phase of the UFO story shifted into the realm of the paranormal. Witnesses began describing not just lights in the sky, but contact, encounters with entities, missing time, and psychic impressions that blurred the line between physical reality and consciousness itself. This section of our story explores the alternative and paranormal theories that emerged in the wake of scientific uncertainty, theories that suggest the mystery of UFOs might not lie in distant galaxies, but in dimensions much closer to home. In the 1960s and 70s, researchers like Jacques Vallée, an astrophysicist and computer scientist, began to challenge the nuts and bolts approach to UFO study. Vallée noticed strange consistencies across centuries of human folklore, beings descending from the sky, luminous spheres, and reports of abduction or transformation. He proposed that these phenomena were not necessarily extraterrestrial but interdimensional, manifestations of a deeper, perhaps intelligent force interacting with human perception. In his works such as Passport to Magonia, Vallée compared modern UFO encounters to ancient stories of fairies, angels, and spirits. The similarities were striking. People described entities who could appear and disappear at will, craft that changed shape or size, and experiences where time seemed to slow or stop entirely. If the witnesses were not imagining these events, then perhaps reality itself was bending around them. The interdimensional hypothesis, though controversial, found an audience among those who sensed that the UFO phenomenon was as psychological as it was physical. The lights in the sky might not be spacecraft, Vallée suggested, but rather manifestations of a reality that coexists with ours, an intelligent system that reveals itself in symbolic, dreamlike ways. To believers, this theory explained why UFOs seemed both real and elusive, leaving physical traces in some cases and none in others. To skeptics, it sounded like mysticism disguised as science. But the theory's appeal lay in its ability to connect the modern mystery to humanity's oldest mythologies. In a world obsessed with technology, it reintroduced the idea that the universe might still contain mystery that transcends our tools and measurements. At the same time, Other researchers were exploring the psychological and consciousness-based dimensions of UFO experiences. Psychiatrists like John Emack, a Harvard professor, took a bold step into territory most of his peers avoided. Mack spent years interviewing individuals who claimed to have been abducted by non-human entities, people from diverse backgrounds, many with no history of mental illness or delusion. What struck him was not just the consistency of their stories, but the emotional impact they carried. These individuals described being taken aboard luminous craft, undergoing medical or telepathic examinations, and receiving messages about environmental destruction or human spirituality. Mack concluded that the experiences, while not necessarily physical in the conventional sense, were real to the psyche, profound encounters that altered consciousness and behavior in lasting ways. He was not alone. Hypnotic regression sessions conducted in the 1980s and 1990s revealed recurring patterns: missing time, unexplained marks, vivid dreams, and emotional trauma mixed with awe. Many experiencers reported a lingering sense of peace or purpose after their encounters, as though the beings they met were guiding humanity toward awareness. Others felt violated, haunted by fragments of memory that made sleep difficult. These contradictions mirrored the dual nature of the phenomenon itself, both enlightening and terrifying, both intimate and cosmic. Meanwhile, the paranormal overlap grew impossible to ignore. Poltergeist activity, electromagnetic anomalies, and psychic phenomena often accompanied UFO sightings. In some desert regions, locals reported seeing orbs of light that seemed to respond to thought or emotion. Paranormal investigators suggested that these were not merely physical crafts but energy manifestations, conscious, reactive, and somehow aware. Military personnel stationed near test sites, such as those around Dugway Proving Ground and Skinwalker Ranch in Utah, described encounters that blended UFOs, strange creatures, and disturbances in time and space. Skinwalker Ranch, in particular, became the focal point of study for both paranormal researchers and intelligence officials. Funded in part by the Pentagon's ADIP program, investigations there recorded sightings of glowing spheres, unexplained radiation spikes, and objects that appeared to phase in and out of visibility. The research concluded not with answers, but with an unsettling realization. Whatever intelligence was behind these events, it seemed to play with human attention, revealing itself just enough to be noticed, then retreating back into invisibility. This led to the rise of another theory, the trickster hypothesis, popularized by anthropologists and researchers like George P. Hansen. It suggested that the phenomenon behaves like a living paradox, appearing at the edges of human understanding, always defying categorization. The UFO, under this view, is not a thing but an event, an experience designed to challenge our perception of reality. Just as folklore once used trickster figures like Coyote or Loki to represent chaos and transformation, modern UFO phenomena might act as a mirror reflecting humanity's collective psyche. The trickster never gives answers, it only provokes questions. Cultural theorists have noted how this ambiguity fuels belief rather than destroys it. When people witness something inexplicable, they seek meaning in patterns that match their worldview. A religious observer might interpret a glowing orb as an angelic presence. A scientist might see advanced propulsion. A spiritual seeker might perceive interdimensional consciousness. In each case, the same event takes on different meanings, shaped by the observer's inner landscape. Perhaps, as some have suggested, the phenomenon intentionally adapts to human expectation, appearing in forms that reflect our cultural imagination. When our mythology was filled with gods and demons, we saw them descend from the heavens. When our age turned scientific, they arrived as spacecraft. This fluid nature of the UFO phenomenon has deep psychological implications. It challenges the rigid boundary between subjective and objective experience. Are these entities external visitors, or are they emergent from the collective unconscious, archetypes made visible through some unknown mechanism? The psychiatrist Carl Jung, in his 1959 essay Flying Saucers, A Modern Myth of Things Seen in the Skies, proposed that UFOs represented a technological mandala, a symbol of wholeness projected by a civilization struggling with disconnection and existential anxiety. Jung didn't dismiss the possibility of a physical component, but he emphasized the psychic one, that UFOs might be mirrors, forcing humanity to confront its own longing for transcendence. As these theories matured, they began influencing not only fringe research but also mainstream thought about consciousness itself. Scientists studying quantum physics and non-locality began entertaining the idea that reality might be participatory, that observation shapes existence. If consciousness plays a role in physical manifestation, then phenomena like UFOs could represent an interface between mind and matter, a kind of feedback loop where belief and observation intertwine. Some physicists, such as the late Hal Puthoff, who worked with the U.S. government on remote viewing experiments, speculated that UFO propulsion could involve manipulation of space-time through zero-point energy or vacuum fluctuations, concepts that border the metaphysical. Even more provocative are the spiritual interpretations. Many experiencers describe their encounters as awakening experiences rather than invasions. They report a profound sense of unity, as if the visitors, whether physical or energetic, are part of a larger cosmic intelligence guiding human evolution. This theme echoes across countless accounts, the message that humanity must learn empathy, balance, and ecological stewardship before it can join a greater community of life. Whether literal or symbolic, this message resonates deeply in an age of global crisis, suggesting that the UFO phenomenon may not simply be about visitation, but about transformation. Skeptics, of course, remain firm in their stance. They argue that these interpretations stem from cognitive bias, sleep paralysis, and cultural storytelling rather than genuine encounters. Neurologists studying altered states of consciousness note how electromagnetic fields and hypnagogic imagery can produce vivid sensations of presence and abduction. Anthropologists point out that in every society, humans create narratives to explain the unexplainable, blending spiritual and physical reality into a single mythic experience. Yet even they admit that the consistency and depth of these stories hint at something more than random imagination. Whether one sees the UFO as alien, interdimensional, psychic, or symbolic, its function remains the same. It compels us to expand our sense of reality. The mystery operates on multiple levels: scientific, psychological, and spiritual, drawing us toward a horizon we cannot quite reach. In the stillness of the desert night, under the same stars that guided ancient civilizations, it's easy to imagine that reality itself is alive, shifting, and responsive to our awareness. The alternative theories remind us that the unknown may not come from beyond the stars, but from within the fabric of our own consciousness. Perhaps the desert, with its emptiness and silence, acts as a mirror, reflecting not just light from the heavens, but the inner landscape of those who dare to look. Whether the truth lies in physics or psyche, the message remains the same. The universe is larger, stranger, and more intimately connected to our minds than we have ever dared to believe. And somewhere in that vast intersection between the seen and unseen, the UFO continues to glide, silent, luminous, and patiently waiting for us to awaken to what it might really be. Over the decades, UFOs have moved beyond the desert sky to become a permanent part of culture, a shared language of mystery that stretches across film, literature, and collective imagination. What began as isolated encounters evolved into a myth woven through modern storytelling. Hollywood played a major role in shaping this fascination. Movies like The Day the Earth Stood Still, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and Arrival turned the unknown into reflection, suggesting that whatever comes from the stars may be less invasion than revelation. In art and fiction, UFOs symbolize transformation. They represent the human yearning for contact, for validation that we are not alone. During times of uncertainty, the Cold War, technological revolutions, global unrest, the image of a hovering craft mirrored both fear and hope. Governments might have dismissed sightings, but culture amplified them, creating icons of glowing disks and endless skies. The unknown became beautiful, poetic, and strangely comforting. Music, too, carried this resonance. From David Bowie's cosmic personas to folk songs about lights in the desert, artists found in the UFO a metaphor for transcendence. Even television turned mystery into ritual, millions gathering each week to watch the X-Files or documentaries about alien visitors. The once secretive became communal. Psychologists note that this shared fascination reflects a deeper need to believe that the universe notices us, that consciousness extends beyond humanity. The UFO myth connects technology, spirituality, and imagination in one luminous thread. Whether real or symbolic, it gives us a way to talk about wonder in an age that demands proof. And so, under city lights or desert stars, the same question hums quietly through every culture. What if the sky has always been watching back? In recent years, the mystery of UFOs has evolved from rumor into research. In 2017, the New York Times revealed the Pentagon's secret ATIP program, confirming that the U.S. government had quietly studied unidentified aerial phenomena. The release of Navy videos showing fast-moving, wingless objects, recorded by military pilots, reshaped public perception. Suddenly, what was once dismissed as fantasy entered the realm of fact. Commander David Fravor's 2004 encounter with a tic-tac-shaped craft displayed speeds and movements beyond known physics. For the first time, credible evidence replaced speculation. Since then, official efforts have continued. The UAP Task Force and later NASA panels examined hundreds of incidents, many unexplained. Harvard's Avi Loeb launched the Galileo project, using scientific instruments to monitor the skies objectively. Rather than mock the phenomenon, researchers now study it as they would any natural or technological anomaly. The shift from belief to data marks a new era, one that seeks to separate myth from measurable truth. Yet, despite modern tools, the mystery deepens. Some encounters appear responsive, almost intelligent. Others defy radar and visual detection entirely. Governments admit they don't know what these objects are, only that they exist. For scientists and dreamers alike, this uncertainty is both thrilling and humbling. The desert sky, once a canvas for folklore, has become a laboratory of wonder. The question is no longer if something is there, but what? When we step back from decades of reports and speculation, the UFO story reveals less about the sky and more about ourselves. It is a mirror reflecting humanity's longing to connect, to find meaning in a universe that often feels silent. Ancient civilizations spoke of sky gods and fire chariots. Today, we describe lights and crafts. The names change, but the feeling remains awe, humility, and wonder. Psychologists like Carl Jung believed UFOs symbolized humanity's collective imagination, our attempt to unify logic and mystery. In uncertain times, they become beacons of possibility, proof that something larger may exist. Culturally, UFOs evolve with each generation, reflecting its fears and dreams. Cold War anxieties in the 1950s, cosmic curiosity in the space age, digital confusion in today's world of information overload. Each era paints the unknown in its own colors. Perhaps that is why the mystery endures. It speaks not just to science but to the soul. To look up and see something unexplainable is to remember how small we are, and how extraordinary it is to wonder. The UFO is not only a question of technology, it is an expression of consciousness, a reminder that curiosity is our oldest companion. As the stars shimmer overhead, we understand. Maybe the truth has been less about aliens and more about attention, the way we listen, the way we see, the way we reach for meaning in the dark. Now the desert grows still. The wind softens, and the horizon glows faintly under a sweep of endless stars. The journey, from history to witness, from data to dream, leads us here, to peace. The UFO mystery, once loud with speculation, settles into quiet understanding. Some truths, it seems, are not meant to be solved but felt. In the calm of night, the question transforms. The lights above no longer demand explanation, they invite reflection. Whether they are distant travelers, hidden technologies, or natural wonders, their meaning lies in what they awaken within us: curiosity, humility, connection. The unknown reminds us that discovery is not an end, but a rhythm, the pulse of exploration that keeps humanity dreaming. Imagine lying beneath that sky, the earth cool beneath your hands, the universe stretching infinitely above. You exhale, and the world feels wide but gentle. Every unanswered question becomes a kind of comfort. The silence of the cosmos is not emptiness, it is possibility. As your thoughts drift, the desert night carries its eternal hum. Somewhere, perhaps, another observer watches the same stars, wondering the same thing. The mystery continues, calm and luminous, not as fear, but as a lullaby. And in that stillness, you understand. We do not need every answer to rest peacefully beneath the unknown. Some lights are meant to guide us only as far as our dreams.